By the 3rd century AD, Rome was vast but weary. Its legions stretched from Britain's misty isles to the sands of Arabia. Yet the empire that once crushed Carthage and defied Hannibal was bleeding. Civil wars shook the throne. Emperors rose and fell like shadows. And along the northern frontier, the Danube flowed as a restless border. Across that river stirred a people the Romans called the Goths. Tall, fierce, driven by hunger and ambition. They were no longer raiders alone, but nations on the move, pressing against the empire's fragile walls. At first, the Goths struck in lightning raids. Swift horsemen crossed the river, plundered towns, and vanished back into forests. They burned cities in Thrace, threatened Greece, even stormed as far as the Black Sea coasts. For a time, Rome fought back, bribing, hiring, and bleeding. But each clash showed the truth. The Goths were not mere barbarians. They were learning Rome's ways, wielding Roman steel taken in battle, even serving in her armies before turning against her. In 376 AD, tens of thousands of Goths fled across the Danube, seeking refuge from the Huns who swept Europe like wildfire. Emperor Valens allowed them entry, but greed and cruelty by Roman officials drove them to revolt. 2 years later, at Adrianople, Rome tried to crush them. Valens marched with legions, proud and unyielding. The sun scorched the plain as Gothic wagons circled like a fortress. Then, from dust and thunder, the Gothic cavalry struck. The Roman lines broke. Arrows cut down officers, swords clashed, and chaos consumed the field. Emperor Valens himself perished, his body lost to the flames. Adrianople was no mere defeat. It was a revelation. The Roman legion, once invincible, could be destroyed. The age of empire had cracked. After Adrianople, Rome could no longer deny the storm. The Goths were not just raiders, they were settlers, warriors seeking a home inside them. From this point onward, the Gothic Wars would not be about borders alone, but about the survival of Rome itself. Out of the chaos after Adrianople rose a leader who would etch his name into eternity. Alaric, king of the Visigoths. Trained as a soldier in Rome's own armies, he knew her strengths and her weaknesses. He was both Roman and enemy, a man torn between admiration and vengeance. Alaric dreamed not of plunder alone, but of a place for his people within the empire. A homeland carved from Roman soil. When emperors broke promises, when bribes failed, his patience burned to ash. By 408 AD, the eternal city itself trembled. Rome, once mistress of the world, seat of emperors, symbol of empire, was encircled by Gothic camps. Famine gnawed at its people. The Senate, once feared across continents, now begged and bargained. Gold was paid, hostages sent, but peace never lasted. Civil wars and weak emperors left Rome paralyzed. Alaric returned again and again, pressing until the city cracked. On a summer night in 410 AD, the gates of Rome were thrown open. Whether by treachery or despair, no one knows. Alaric's warriors surged in like a tide. For 3 days, the eternal city was plundered. Temples were stripped of treasures, noble houses looted, streets filled with cries. Yet even in fury, Alaric restrained his men from destroying churches. Christianity had spread even among the Goths. Still, the shock was immeasurable. Rome, unconquered for 800 years, had fallen to foreign hands. Across the world, men gasped. If Rome could fall, nothing was eternal. Alaric did not live long to savor his triumph. Months later, he died suddenly, his people mourning him as both king and avenger. Legend says his body was buried beneath a riverbed, along with treasures of Rome. The river diverted and then returned. The laborers slain so the secret would never be revealed. The sack of 410 was not the end of the empire, but it was a prophecy of the end to come. By the 5th century, the Western Roman Empire was broken beyond repair. Germanic tribes carved kingdoms from its corpse: Vandals in Africa, Franks in Gaul, Visigoths in Spain. In Italy itself, a new power rose: the Ostrogoths, led by their king Theodoric the Great. Unlike others, Theodoric dreamed of balance. He ruled as both barbarian warlord and Roman patrician, wearing purple, restoring aqueducts, and defending the old Senate. For a time, Italy lived under a strange peace, Roman in memory, Gothic in rule. But to the east, the Byzantine Empire watched Constantinople, seat of emperors, claimed to be the true Rome. And one man, Emperor Justinian I, would stop at nothing to reclaim the lost lands of the West. In 535 AD, Justinian unleashed his armies. Led by the brilliant general Belisarius, veterans of wars against Persia, they crossed the seas into Sicily and Italy. At first, the victories were dazzling. Cities opened their gates, Gothic garrisons fell. Belisarius, like a figure from old legend, advanced swiftly, even seizing Ravenna, the Gothic capital. But conquest was never so simple. The Ostrogoths were not broken. They rallied under new kings, turning Italy into a battlefield of fire and ruin. Rome itself, that eternal city, became the heart of the struggle. Besieged by Gothic armies, defended by Byzantine walls, the city endured starvation, plague, and endless assaults. The Gothic War was not a campaign but a nightmare, a grinding struggle that lasted nearly 20 years. Generals changed, kings rose and fell. The land was bled dry, its people crushed between two powers. Farms burned, aqueducts shattered, cities emptied. The dream of restoring Rome's glory came, yet the cost was staggering. The land lay in ruins, depopulated and desolate. The Byzantines had reclaimed a corpse, not a crown. And soon, new invaders, the Lombards, would sweep in, making Justinian's triumph hollow. The Gothic Wars of Justinian were both victory and tragedy. They destroyed the last great Gothic kingdom, but in doing so, they ensured Italy would never again rise to its old greatness. Rome had been avenged, but the vengeance left only ashes. By the mid-6th century, the dust of war lay thick over Italy. Cities that once dazzled with marble and gold now stood hollow, their streets overgrown, aqueducts shattered. The Gothic Wars had ended, but the cost was unbearable. Rome's shadow lingered, but the empire that claimed her name was a ghost. The Western Empire had long since died. Now even its memory was fading. Constantinople still called itself Rome, but its victories rang hollow in the desolate lands it had reclaimed. For the Goths, once feared riders across the Danube, this was the twilight. The Visigoths remained in Spain, building kingdoms that blended Roman law with Gothic rule. The Ostrogoths vanished into history, broken by Justinian's wars. Yet in their defiance, their conquests, and their sacking of Rome, the Goths had reshaped the destiny of Europe. They were no longer barbarians. They were founders of kingdoms, heirs to Rome in their own way. Out of the ruins of empire rose something new: medieval Europe. The age of legions and emperors had ended. The age of kings and knights had begun. Where Rome once ruled with law, tribes now ruled with blood and faith. The church rose as a power above kings, and kingdoms carved from Gothic swords became the seeds of nations. The Gothic Wars had not only marked the death of Rome, they had birthed the world that followed. From Adrianople's shattered legions to Alaric's sack of Rome, to to Justinian's Wars of Ashes. The Gothic Wars told one story. Rome believed itself eternal, but no city, no throne, no crown is beyond the reach of time. Yet in that fall was also renewal. The Gothic Wars were not the end of civilization, but its transformation. A bridge from antiquity to the Middle Ages, from empire to Europe. Rome died, but the world marched on.